Morena tātou. Good morning and welcome to the Bay of Plenty Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee meeting, being held today, Friday, the 27th of September, and we are opening our meeting at 10 a.m. this morning. We'd like to open, please, with a karakia and a mihi whakatau. We are joined this morning by our Kawerau District Council iwi liaison, cultural advisor, and tūwhare toa ki Kawerau Kaimātua, te hau kakawa te rire. If we can all please be upstanding for our opening karakia. Kia tō koutou. Bring your hands, ko te hau.
Tēnā tātou, e ala tātou hui mai nei, e ta ringa kahau tātou matutarang, a me pēne me hari karakia ma tātou. E roi tātou ringa te matu te tama te warua tapu āmu. E tō mātou matutarang, e nei rā mātou hui nei, ringa tā raro tō tama hi o plaki. Ka tai e tēnā karakia mai ki a tō tama, ke tō tama ki a koe, ana ki whiriwhiri a mātou nā kōrero hōhonu, nā kōrero tai wanga nā rangatira ko tā mai nei, e roto i a mātou, e te poare o Kawerau, te iwi o ke o tūwhare toa. O no i a mai koe nā waka, o hari a mai koe nā maki. E tau hia ke kōrero i a mātou ki mihi e, ke mitene tā mātou kōrero karakia ki a koe tēnei wā. O mātou whānau, o rātou ko hāre atu ko wehe atu. O wehe atu rātou ki reira, ki a koe ki tō ringa kaha, o heo karatu ki tō mātou ariki. Amen. Amen. Mā te Maria, a te atua, tātou katoa, e tia ki, mana no e whakau. O tātou ngā kau i te pai, mā te atua tā mai tira, mā te wairua tā puhoki, rātou atua ko tā ine, tātou katoa e whakapai. Amen. Ki te haere tō prori o tō ingoa nui e pā. Anei ko tō neo mātou karikia kia koe. Koe karatu ki tō mātou ariki. Amen. Ai no. Sit down, appreciate it. Pati hei e mori ora. Ko putaua ke te maunga. Ko tau tahi te tangata. Taka ngā patu wai. Ko tūwhare tō te iwi. Ko te arawa te waka. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātata. Te ki rā o tātou mate. Tangi e mai koutou. Te hanga e mai koutou runga o koutou marae. O koutou rohe. O koutou hapu. O koutou iwi. Ahi a mai. Ka koutou ka tau iwi katoa. Ki whiriwhiri e rota tātou ruma. I tēnei rā. Ma te honerere ko tā mai i a koutou. Nō reira. Ke nā mate wahi atu koutou. Ki kona wahi atu koutou. Ana e rā te kaupapa ta rā. Tā mai nei, ko hui nei. I runga nā hua tonu. I runga o tātou hui i tēnei i rā. I'm not going to the English, which I'm not very good at it, but no mind. Welcome all. Welcome to the mayor. Kia koe, mare kura. Tāni a tepo te rawa, tēnā koe. Ana mai ki roto o tā aroa, ki roto i ana ati tūwhara toa. Tēnā koe, welcome. A hui rea te kia koe, wiki tōria, Lukas. Mata atua, tēnā waka o tātou. Tēnā koe, tēnā koe, tēnā. Me pēne ki nā rangatira katoa, nā me noho nei muri. Ana, tēnā koutou katoa. Nō reira kare rahi ki nā mihi kone, kia koutou nā kōrero, kia koutou nā kōrero. Just in what I've been saying about the mountain, Schooner Farm Mountain, and all the rivers. and tribe, and we was not to what it ana waka taro and mata chua. So I did, among some of us, we bring it here and we talk about it, we cry about it, but you always keep it in our hearts. Whoever, what color you are, we don't worry about that in the color. Anybody, every nationality, we bring that in with us on our Māori ways. Our Māori ways, we have to, because if we call ourselves by ourselves, I don't see the word, we're not one. But during these ways, today, civil defense, I'm staying here to listen. So I get clever. So I'm clever. But kia ora, I haven't got much to say. And let me hit you again with a bit of a song, a little one that to wake everybody up. Maku e mia tu ka koto te ui Māori no reira ele te mi ka koto ka ora atangi te manu si ori ori atangi te ngaka tangata lorera ele te mi kia koto kia orara lorera kare te ra kora kora te ngama te kera te kora te wena ki na no wailu wai te ra te kera te ane ra te kanu ora e mihine e porporo te mora te lorera te na koto te na koto te ki na ro kia ora. Who are going to reply?
Leila, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koe papa. Ko kaukau lea hau, kei Ngāti Tūreiti, tupuni kōkiri tēnei hoi anō e tuake au ki te mihi ki a koe. Tēnei tanga he Tūreiti. Koa te apologies from my team leader, she's also late, she rang me. So I just thought, ko te mea nui, whakautu tō te kōrero ki a koe, tēnei te mihi ki a koe e te rangatira. Tēnā tātou.
Mai ngā kuria whare ki tihirau, mai make tū ki tau pō nuitia. Tau tū te whenua, tau tū te moana, tau tū te taiao, tau tū te tangata. Tihei Moriora. Kia rangi nui rawa, ko papatua nuku e te rima nei a tātou katoa. Tēnā korua. Ki ngā mate huhua o te wā, o kia tū koutou ki a Hawaiki Nui, Hawaiki Roa, Hawaiki Pāma Mau. Haere, haere, haere atu rā. Ka hoki mai ngā mihi ki ngā iwi mana whenua o tūwhare toa ki Kawero. Tēnā koutou katoa. E te kaikarakia, e te pai tapu, koro Boise. Tēnā koe, tēnā koe, tēnā koe. Ka nui te koa, me te hari ki te... Ka nui te koa me te hari ki te tūtaki a koutou. Ko tai mai mātou ki te toko te kaupapao tēnei wā. E hara hau i te tangata mōhio ki te kōrero. Me tika, me tuku, i ngā kihi ki a koutou, ki a tātou katoa. E tika ana te kōrero, i a tātou tūpuna, nau te raurau, nāku te raurau, kā ki te kete. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. He wai. E tū. Ai. Te wāta te awa. Te aroha, te whakapono, me ani mai e tātou tātou e ano. Te te whakapono, me te
Right. Hello, Boise. You said you weren't very good at the English, but actually it was spot on, and your words, they weren't many, but they were very important. So I really appreciate it. Kia ora.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kuri no ngā mihi kia kōtau hoki e kā, mō koutou mihi maha, kia whakamahana tā tātou kaupapa tērā. So just would like to thank you all for your welcome, for your prayer. There's much emphasis in our Civil Defence Emergency Management Plan about the importance of taking a holistic view and really putting some deliberate effort and action into giving effect to Te Ao Māori values, and that's the reason why we've opened our meeting, other than the fact that our karawa told us that that's what we needed to do. So kia ora tātou. We will move into our kuina that we've been blessed and welcomed in for Te Atua to guide us with his wisdom. Whānau, we start this morning with a welcome to our new guests here at the table. We welcome, following the recent local body election in Tauranga City, Tauranga Moana, we're joined this morning by Councillor Kevin Schuler. We do have some apologies also from Tauranga City, but welcome Kevin, wonderful to have you in the city of Kohido. And we're also joined this morning by new Director of Emergency Management by Mark Crowe, for those who don't know. Congratulations, I think over to Mark. Well done and welcome to the table. We will lean on you very heavily to guide our ship soon. Well done. We're on to, forgive me, we are joined this morning online by our Deputy Chair of Emergency Management, His Worship Mayor James Denyer from the Western Bay of Plenty, and we also have Principal Advisor Cara Gordon joining online. From Australia, no less. Let's hope her connection stays connected for the entirety of our meeting today. So, agenda item 1, we have apologies from Neotani Taxon for an early departure at 12 p.m, so we'll keep moving along and get across as much as we can, Your Worship. Thank you. We have apologies from Mayor Mahe Drysdale of Tauranga City, Deputy Mayor Jen, help me, Councillor Schooler.
Yes.
Sounds very similar to yourself, could be related, from Deputy Mayor Jen Schooler, Deputy Mayor Leslie Immick of Whakatane, the alternate member, and Councillor Ron Scott. Are there any further apologies? If there are none, can I invite a mover for the apologies?
So moved.
I have a mover and Councillor Campbell and a seconder and Liam Moore. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against? There are none. The item is carried. We have no public forum this morning. There have been no requests received. We will move on. Agenda item 3 is any items not on the agenda, and there are none. No new ones. We have more than enough for today. Agenda item 4, order of business. There are no changes required in terms of the order of business. Agenda item 5, inviting. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest from any of the members for any of the agenda items today? If there are none. Agenda item 6, moving on to public excluded business to be transferred into the open. There are none. We're very procedural at the front end of this meeting. Agenda item 7 is minutes, and we are on page 9 of our agenda this morning. Agenda item 7.1, the Bay of Plenty Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee Minutes, which was held way back on the 5th of July 2024. We have a number of new members here in the room, and we do actually have really just 3 current members today, and myself, Mayor Moore, and His Worship Mayor Denyer, who were present at the previous meeting. I'm actually happy to move those minutes.
Happy to second.
You were quicker than those of us here in the room, Your Worship. I have and Mayor Denyer. All those in favour, please signal aye.
Aye.
Those against, do we have any questions or points of clarification with regards to those meeting minutes? If there are none, we'll move on. We're at agenda item 8, which is the reports. On page 18 of our agenda, agenda item 8.1, membership update, confirmation of appointment to the Bay of Plenty Sedum Group Joint Committee. Director Crowe, we're in your hands, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll take the report as read, but the basic context is following the recent 2024 Tauranga City Council elections. We have a requirement to update the membership of this group. With this report, we have two recommendations. First of all, that the report is received, and to confirm that Mayor Mahi Drysdale is Tauranga City Council representative of the Bay of Plenty CDM group, with Deputy Mayor Jen Schuler and Kevin Schuler, sorry, I'm trying to separate those slowly, as TCC's alternative.
Very good, so we have recommendations. Can I invite a mover? I have a mover in Metetso. I have a seconder. A seconder in Mia Moore. Congratulations on the outcome of your recent local body elections. Councillor Schuler, without a shadow of a doubt, you will be the only one who will be guaranteed to be here at the table following the October 2025, and the rest is up to the communities of the Bay of Plenty. I have a mover and a seconder. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. Moving on, please, to page 21 of our agenda. We're at agenda item 8.2, which is the Joint Committee roles, responsibilities, delegations and CDM system overview. Given that we do have a new membership, we thought it would be very timely just to remind ourselves, possibly annually, Director might be a very good idea, given that so much happens throughout the year, an opportunity to be revised of the roles and responsibilities. Director Craig, in your hands.
Thank you. What I will do is we'll take the first opportunity to test our technology if we can. I'll pass to Kara in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to pass this one to Kara. There's a considerable amount of work that's gone into putting this report together. I think there'll be a good reference touch point for us in the future, just to get a quick idea of structures without diving too deep into each item. And it's been quite a considerable piece of work for Kara to pull together. So I'll pass over to her to talk to a paper. Thanks, Kara. Let's see if this works.
Morena Tato, just confirming you can hear me in the room.
Yeah, Kara, we can hear you just fine.
Fabulous. Success at the first stage. Let's see if it holds. As Mark and the Chair, thank you for the introduction, said, this report has come out of the new membership of the Joint Committee and a real opportunity to run through these roles and responsibilities. I will take the full report as read. However, I'll also take this opportunity to work through a couple of the key points within that report before I open up for questions. Noting that this report is quite complex and quite broad, Mark and I may tag team some of these answers between the two of us. I hope that's okay with the committee. All right, so in terms of the core points, as you'll see in the paper, it's made up of a number of foundational documents or content from a number of foundational documents. Those documents will not come as a surprise to many of the members of the group. The CDM Act, of course, is our legislative framework for emergency management within New Zealand, and it is the document under which we have formed the Bay of Plenty Civil Defence Emergency Management Group. That group then has a supporting constitution which enables or sets out the roles, responsibilities and functions of this committee. And that's a 2013 document that was established by your predecessors. In terms of other documents that were established by your predecessors, the Bay of Plenty CDM Group Partnership Agreement is a core foundational document for our group. What that document does is it lays out the roles and responsibilities of individual group members, so that is the territorial authorities and the regional council as members of the CDM group, and Emergency Management Bay of Plenty. This agreement was established when the Bay of Plenty CDM Group moved from a previous model where Emergency Management Bay of Plenty was delivering services on behalf of all of their group members, through to a model that we have now where Emergency Management Bay of Plenty delivers on behalf of the collective, and individual councils also have emergency management staff who deliver on behalf of your councils as well. So that is what the partnership agreement details. And that was signed in 2019 and will be due for review in 2029. The next one is the Bay of Plenty CDM Group Plan, which was signed off by this committee at the beginning of this year, and that sets our 5-year strategic direction. and is supported by the delegations manual. And that manual is really critical because one of the nuances of the CEDM Act is a lot of the roles, functions and powers are delivered to the CEDM group itself, so to this committee. And it doesn't distinguish between the roles and functions of the individual members versus the members as a collective. And so this document enables us to detail out those functions and powers and deliver them to the correct individuals. And so that document was signed off at the beginning of this year, so that's by this committee. Last but not least, in terms of that setup, is the Administrating Authority Services document. So the CEDM Act requires the Bay of Plenty Regional Council to operate as what's called the Administrating Authority for the CEDM Group. And that function means that, well, first of all, they look after emergency management Bay of Plenty, they support this committee, and they enable that collective function. The services document details what those roles and responsibilities are between the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and what services Bay of Plenty Regional Council will provide on behalf of the CEDM group. So some of it is quite detailed. It's things like Miranda's services supporting this committee, and it also details the roles and responsibilities and reporting structures within an emergency, and really clarifies what that role of the administrating authority is. What those collectively mean, and it sits in under our New Zealand CEDM framework, so this is consistent across the country, is that roles, responsibilities and functions shift within emergency management before an emergency, during an emergency, and after an emergency. And so that's how we've structured this report, to detail those roles and responsibilities across those three phases against the different key players that are involved. Now, as I said, I won't go through this in detail because I will take the whole meeting if I do, but I'd just like to call out a few key diagrams to reference, and then before we open for questions or any other comments from Mark, if he would like to do so. So the core diagram is in the first section in the roles and responsibilities before an emergency, is under section 3.4.1 and is on page 27. So that document is titled Bay of Plenty CEDM Group Line Management and Reporting Hierarchy. And what that shows is how our group works together as a collective with all of the different component parts in order to structure ourselves. As you'll see, it's centred around our governance, which is this committee here, which was established under Section 12 of the CEDM Act, and reflects that membership from councillors and mayors within that.
Java Evolve 20 SE.
Java Evolve 20 SE. Apologies, was that a question directed at me?
It's fine, Cara. Sorry, we just have someone with mute.
I can't mute the host.
On, off, yeah. But we'll sort that out, carry on.
Good. So it reflects that central role of the Joint Committee and that membership on the committee, setting the direction for the broader CEDM group. This committee is supported, as you know, by a coordinating executive group. Fiona McTavish is the chair of that group at the moment, and that is established under Section 20. One of the important things to note here is that the KEG is represented by your chief executives from councils, but also senior members from emergency services and other agencies. So that's a broader committee. And under that is a local authority subcommittee of KEG, which is your GMs or general managers who are responsible for CEDM coming together to support this committee to function. Mark Crowe, as Director of Emergency Management, chairs that committee, and that's that core operational link. And obviously emergency management staff across Emergency Management Bay of Plenty and your territorial authorities or your councils support this whole system to function. So that's that overview of the reporting hierarchy within our CEDM group, and obviously that sits within a broader network, which you can see in the earlier diagrams. Now, that diagram is quite complex, and you'll see on the next page that it shifts to something far more simple under Section 4 within an emergency. That reflects the reality that in an emergency environment, we need that strong connection directly between the group controller and our governance, rather than working through these broader governance structures, or broader reporting structures, should I say. So what you'll see on the right-hand side of that diagram is your local controllers. So they work in with your territorial authorities, for those who are territorial authority members. And you have a member within your council. So in Kawerau, it's Lee, for example, who is your local controller, and he is reporting directly into the executive from a council chief executive perspective, recognising the chief executive's role leading the organisation, and into Her Worship Mayor Faylene as the local authority mayor and the broader council at that local level. What you'll also note is an important link between the local controller and the group controller there, where under the CDM Act, the local controller is required to follow any direction from the group controller within an emergency environment. And that reflects that the way powers under legislation work is that the group controller's powers are given to the local controller rather than the local controller having powers independently of the group controller. So that connection between those two is important. And you'll also see there that the group controller has a line up to the national controller in a state of national emergency. The group controller has a line into the political and executive again, just like local controllers, but obviously it's the collective rather than the individuals. So through to the chair of the coordinating executive group and the chair of the joint committee or deputy chair as appropriate. And obviously there's a link there as well between yourselves as political members and the central government political members and the central government chief executives as well. So reflecting that link that you as mayors and councillors have with MPs and ministers at that national government level. So that's the overview of that response structure. There's a lot more detail that sits in underneath in terms of how Mark and ourselves as group controllers will run the response, how the local controllers will run the response, but we wanted to focus on that connection between controllers and yourselves at that governance and political level. One of the core functions that I did just want to tag to you or reflect to you in this context is the function of the mayors within territorial authorities or their delegate and the chair or deputy chair and within the broader region for declaring a state of local emergency or extending a state of local emergency. That function is detailed within our group plan. It was, I know a number of you have had that briefed by your individual staff members, and it also was briefed at that broader forum that we did at the beginning of the training. However, what we've just done to support today's conversations is printed out some declaration packs for you. They'll be passed out if they have not already, which is just a pack which contains the links that are detailed in this report in section 4.1 that gives you some hard copy reference documents. The key reasoning for that being that if there's an emergency, and for example, Mayor Faylene, we're trying to get to you to ask you to declare an emergency over the region, or if one of your local controllers is for your territorial authority, it gives easy access if we can't drive. We can do that over the phone. You can sign that document and no one has to drive the paperwork for you. Health and safety from both sides, but also speed. So we've just got some hard copy packs there and available for you to take home and keep within your environments to make that process a little bit easier. I just wanted to tag that. And last but not least, because I realise I've spoken quite a bit so far, is to just talk to the roles and responsibilities after an emergency and the structures and processes that come into play there. That's within our recovery environment. The core point there is that these structures will shift and change depending on the response. You'll note I don't have a lovely diagram in this one because we can't preempt what that will look like. Those governance structures will be developed in partnership with this committee following an emergency around what's required. Sometimes it might be an emergency that's within a single territorial authority and you'll use your normal council structures for that. As we've seen in Cyclone Gabriel and our neighbours to the east and in Auckland as well, they've looked for a more multi-agency, multi-level committee, including political staff, political members, chief executives and some staff as well, and from agencies. So that will just depend on the situation we're in the response environment, and that discussion will happen at the time. So those were the key things I wanted to cover. Mark, did you have anything you wanted to say? Otherwise, we can open up for questions if there are any.
I think from Chair through is we'll just open for questions and take a lead from there if there are any.
Yeah, hi, Cara. It's you said yourself it was all very complicated, and that's the thing that sticks out for me. And I'm just wondering, in light of the comments that Minister Mitchell made in this very forum about the fragmentary nature of all of this in New Zealand, whether or not this organogram that we've got here, how it integrates with the rest of the country at the moment. Is that fragmentation still there, or is Bay of Plenty's similar to other regions? I mean, is this really just stamped out everywhere, or is it still all different?
The structure that we work under, and if I may, Cara, the structure that we work under is the same across the country in terms of the statutory framework. It's how the local arrangements are made that may differ slightly. It's, if I may, rather informally, it's a bit of a people game. So it's down to maintaining those relationships across agencies as much as it is following the statutory guidance we're given. So if we go to the response recovery environment, what we really find tested, and I think what the reports show us over time, is it's the strength, breadth, depth of the relationships prior to events that lead to the success inside of them. So that's where the value add is outside of the structure that we present here today.
Thank you.
Any other questions or points of clarification? We understand that that is a lot, and there are different phases that we move between. All the best laid plans, really, when they come to life, you do what you do, and as Director Pro has re-emphasised, the relationships that you form prior to anything happening will be returned to a new weight of gold if you put the work in beforehand. It's very hard to form a relationship in times of crisis when there are a lot of people, your people are working needing answers, needing help at the time. So that's, doesn't sound like it. That's an encouragement, team, to continue on with our relationship within our community. It is incredibly helpful. To be able to do points of clarification, perhaps? Not at this time, so thank you for that. A very good demonstration of there are some statutory frameworks. They play their part, but it comes down to people at the end of the day when we do have times of crisis and vulnerability, I would say, as well. So we do have one recommendation, please, that the Civil Defence Group Joint Committee receives the report, Joint Committee roles, responsibilities, delegations, and CDM system overview. Do I have a mover? I have a mover in there, Texel. Second. I have a seconder in there, Moore. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. We are at agenda item 8.3 on page 34 of our agenda. Director Pro, we're in your hands.
Thank you, Chair. This one is relatively procedural in nature, and we would have seen many of these in the past, and it relates to the appointment of our group controllers and alternate group controllers. So in this case, it's an alternate group controller appointment. This has been up through the KEG process and now sits for you all for approval. And the approval we're requesting is that of Stace Tahiri, who's the Manager of Operations within MBOP, to be an alternate group controller of the Bay of Plenty Seeding Group, as defined under Section 26(2) of the Seeding Act. There's a little bit of background in there on Stace. Effectively, I think you all know him well, he's been to this forum many a time. Stace has been acting in a duty controller function under delegated authority from myself for some time. So with his new appointment or permanent appointment to the managerial role within the team, we'd like to formalise this and have him on the roster full time. So, and that's with this committee to approve that recommendation. Thanks.
Move the recommendation, Chair, 1 and 2.
Recommendation 1 to receive the report and to approve the appointment of Stace Tahiri. So moved by Councillor Campbell. Do I have a second? I have a seconder in Nea Luka. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against? There are none. The item is carried. We are at page 38 of our agenda this morning. Agenda item 8.4, which is the amendment to standing orders virtual attendance at meetings. I see we presented by Marinda, our committee advisor.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chair. Can you? Yes, this report is on page 38. It's got 3 recommendations. It's just an administrative matter asking the committee to consider adopting updated standing orders to allow them to continue with the current practice to join meetings via virtual attendance and still be counted towards the quorum.
Very good. Elected members, any comments? Chair Campbell, perhaps, in terms of the Regional Council recent 12th of September meeting, any?
I'd just like to move the recommendation again, makes it simplicity and let's get on with it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, there's just a recommendation 3 that we need 75% to adopt amended standing orders.
Very good. Any questions or points of clarification?
I just wanted to ask you, thank you, Attorney, through you. I'm very supportive of this. I think that given our vast region, it is important for all people to be able to participate if they wish and for a quorum not to be an issue. But I do just note in the report that it says the chairperson no longer needs to be physically present at a hybrid meeting to undertake the chair's duties. I just wonder, as a comment or to seek some guidance on whether sometimes if the chair is present in the meeting, the chair must chair the meeting. But in other cases, if the chair is not physically present, it would go to the deputy chair. So the chair can still be attending by virtual meeting, but won't need to chair. So I just think in terms of ensuring that any future meetings are able to be chaired and led easier, it is always easier to chair a meeting if you're here physically in person. So just wanted to check that that wouldn't be a hindrance if we were able to hand over the chairing duties to the deputy who may be physically present. It's a bit detailed, but I think it would be helpful just to seek some guidance if the committee was okay with.
Me too. So completely agree and completely understand. Would seek support from this committee that common sense, which is not so common, would prevail. That the logistically, that of course where it's possible and where you can, let's make the effort to be present. Yep. And the rationale to that would be when there is a need to respond in times of crisis, you cannot do that virtually, or you cannot do it well. In some cases, as we've seen recently in Gabrielle, you cannot do that at all if the technology is not available. So common sense will prevail. I'm sure we have elected members of this committee and staff of emergency management that would say makes all the sense in the world for those who are present, rather than a room of committee members present trying to be chaired from the virtual attendance. That would just be an encouragement. It's silent in terms of what's actually been adopted. There is a specificity regarding the approval to attend meetings. I think I'm reading from page 40. I also wondered about the practicality of chairing from the screen when everybody else is actually physically present, and would seek support from members that common sense will prevail in terms of those who are physically present in person to be able to support the meeting, if that's what I think I'm hearing from you. So, any comments from committee members?
All I can comment about is that COVID-19 would have been a prize example of when we had a real disaster on our hands, and it worked fine at a particular time. None of us could be in the room with each other. So, but yeah, common sense I think will play a big part.
Common sense team, let's be a team of common sense, thank you.
Mayor Fanning, if I just comment on that one, it's my experience that, and just following up Malcolm's comments, chairing either on Zoom or in person works quite well. It's the hybrid which tends not to work quite so well. And so I agree with you that common sense should prevail. It's just whether the standing orders allows you, if the chair is on Zoom and I or other members in the room would make more sense to chair it, whether that's actually allowed.
That will be allowed, yes. This is just an opportunity if the chairperson cannot be in the room and there is no deputy for the chair to step up and chair the meeting.
Edina, did you hear that response? It's possible.
Okay, if it's possible, that's fine. It's just whether standing orders allows you the flexibility to do that. Because normally they say that if the chair's present, then they must chair it.
Which was my concern.
Yes, so for clarity,
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So for clarity, would that be that if the chair was absent physically and the deputy chair was present, that the deputy chair would assume by default?
Sounds like common sense to me, Councillor Schuler, thank you. And I will take the opportunity with our KEG chair, who is also the CE of Regional Council, given that standing orders, just to confirm that understanding is there and the intent is there, I think, is what we're after.
Yes, Your Worship, this is to achieve maximum flexibility for you and to recognise there will be situations where you may not all be able to be in the room and to give the chair flexibility as well. So as possible that you could say if you were not in the room to delegate to me then. Yep.
Very good. The intent is there. Maximum flexibility, particularly at times of crisis when we need to move very quickly. We have 3 recommendations, if there's nothing further, to receive the amendment to standing orders report. Recommendation 2 confirms the amended standing orders to be used for the conduct of meetings as adopted by the administering authority at a meeting held on 12th of September. And recommendation 3 notes that 75% majority vote is required to adopt the amended standing orders. Do I have a mover? I have a mover, sorry, forgive me, and Councillor Campbell. Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder and Mayor Tapsell. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. Let's just check where we are. We are at page 46 of our agenda. Agenda item 8.5, which is the appointment policy for controllers and recovery managers. Director Crowe. That was all day.
You'll get sick of me eventually. So thank you. I'll take this report as read, but I will give a little bit of a narrative to it perhaps for background. So we have a work item that's been carried over from 2023-2024 annual work program for the group office, and that was to complete a controllers and recovery managers policy for appointment and a guide to the professional development of those controllers, being that the controller function is so integral to the success of any response efforts we have, as is the recovery manager. So those work items have now been completed after extensive consultation through those forums and through your council staff members. And we now present to you today the appointment policy. The development pathway was, well, they've both been approved to KEG, but the development pathway as a training pathway closed out at joint at KEG level, and the appointment policy needs to come to this forum because ultimately the ability and the delegation to make appointments as recovery managers and controllers, whether they be local or group, is maintained by this forum. So this document does not change that, it does not take it away, it just demonstrates a pathway to those appointments, so that when you're presented with a decision to be made around them, then you know it's been an informed one before it's got here. So all that's detailed in the policy attached, but I'm happy to take and answer any questions on those.
Points of clarification, committee members. If there are none, we do have recommendations.
Just a quick
Councillor
question.
Shulin.
Thank you. Just on the bottom of page 847, just the other point, there's this reference to a mentor. So is that a established group or point so part of that process of getting the right people on board? Just a quick bit of explanation.
Could you just refer me to the page, Elaine?
Page 47.
Oh, 47.
Just
Oh,
Very
right,
last line.
great, yes.
Just a discussion around what the mentor.
So the mentor piece falls predominantly within the pathway and development document, and that talks to those, I suppose, frankly, those with more experience having the ability to coach and mentor those that are still working their way up through the system. So that'll sit both over the controller function and the recovery function. So to put that in practical terms, for the local controller elements, that'll be led by the group controller, myself, and for the recovery managers, that'll be led at the stage by Julian Rabbit-Eugene, the principal advisor recovery at group level.
Good. There's nothing further. My only comment would be it would be great to be taken along the journey. So while I understand that there are some operational tasks and matters and mentoring that occurs, rather than just raising those appointments up for procedural understanding, something that this committee committed to right at the very beginning of this triennium, would encourage either yourself or your local controllers just to pay the courtesy of keeping your elected members up to date, just updated in terms of the progress, so that when it comes to the table, it's well informed.
Certainly, Chair, and that's part of the intent. There's a line on page 56 that talks to a rather informal catch-up before those appointment processes come through, so that we can have a brief discussion. So point 3 on page 56 in the red box, it talks to a discussion with the seating group controller or recovery manager on proposed nomination. So that would be with the nominee and then with yourself in the case of Kaurau.
We happy with that, team? That's just so that we were informed rather than reading and finding out at a Bay of Plenty regional level what's going on internally. Great practice. And it may be required actually prior to the formal appointment, should we unfortunately have an event. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
If there's nothing further, no further points of clarification, we do have 4 recommendations with regards to this agenda item. 1, to receive the report, appointment policy for controllers and recovery managers. 2, notes of development of the Bay of Plenty Sedum Group Guide to the development of controllers and recovery managers. 3, approves the Bay of Plenty Sedum Group draft policy for the appointment of controllers and recovery managers. And 4, revokes all previous Bay of Plenty Sedum Group controller and recovery manager appointment policies. Do we have a mover? I have a mover again, and Councillor Campbell. Do we have a seconder? I have a seconder and Mayor Moore. All those in favour, please signal aye.
Aye.
Those against. The item is carried. We are on page 80 of our agenda this morning. Agenda item 8.6, which is the draft Bay of Plenty Sedum Group annual report. Previous year 2023 through to 24. Director Pro. Thank you.
Again, I'll take this report as read, but I will, if we do have questions, refer those to Teo, and thank you to Teo for his work in putting this together. This draft's annual report summarises the activities of the group over the 23-24 financial year and measures it against the outcomes of what was now our old group plan, the 2018-23 and group plan document. So there we have 2 recommendations there, but happy to take any questions associated with the report.
Please join us at the table, Taylor. Happy for you to share any, dare I say it, lowlights, or rather finish on the highlights of the report. Within your hands, Taylor, if there's anything that you would like to highlight for committee members, please.
In general, there's the highlights of the report. You see how many highlights there are. So it's seeing the amount of work that is done by the group. It's focused on the group level, so there's more the expectation now and to work together with the territorial authorities to include emergency management activities they do on a local level in their annual report. This year, not that many deployments from the group. Remember last year we had quite a few deployments coming through. This year I think we assisted with Auckland and Wairoa and a little bit of Gisborne. So you see a little bit less there, but still helping out the other groups as well. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
A number of highlights, and thank you for being very helpful in having them in sections. So it was far easier to be able to read and actually cast an eye across the work of the entire group and all of the staff at the same time. Committee members, if there's any acknowledgements for the annual plan. Congratulations, team, well done. It is an odd piece of work to be heightened in readiness, unfortunately through the experience and the learnings of prior events. And that is the business that we're in here at this table for this particular piece of work. Team, we have two recommendations. Recommendation 1, to receive the report draft Bay Plenty Sedum Group Annual Report 23 to 24 and to approve the draft Bay Plenty Annual Report 23-24. I have a mover and Mayor Tapsell. Do I have a seconder? Seconder and Councillor Schuller. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against? There are none. The item is carried. Thank you. Page, forgive me, 98 of our agenda. Agenda item 8.7. Director Pro, which is the Bay of Plenty Sedum Group Annual Plan. We're moving into the next year now that we've dealt with 23 to 24, 24 through to 25. You're in your hands, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You'll see attached to this report the annual plan document for 24-25. Now, there's a couple of high-level observations. As you may note that it's quite a bit shorter in terms of the items we'll be reporting on back to this forum, and that's been something that's been the piece of work getting into here. So my apologies on behalf of them on the delay getting here. Normally you'd see it before we enter into the financial year. We had a couple of hold-ups. Primarily, we wanted to get some guidance from the reviews and so forth that were going on for last year's events and see how that was going to incorporate into our work program going forward. So while we waited for those to come out, this item went through a bit of a pause, but I can assure you that time hasn't been lost. We could anticipate a lot of that work and we've been carried on with it. And a lot of the items that were in there are actually contained within our much larger planning document, the 5-year draft work program that, again, Teo has spent a considerable amount of time putting together. So well done, Teo, thank you. So this is a lot of extract from that, and it's gone through a prioritisation process at Kegalay and then particularly at Keeg in the last cycle. I think process. So we now present that today for your approval for the 2024-25 year.
Committee members. Points of clarification for our future piece of work for the current financial year that we are operating within the 24-25 year.
Happy to move the recommendations, Madam Chair.
There are none. We have a mover for the recommendations to receive the report 24-25 annual plan and to approve. I have a mover in Mayor Denia.
I do just have a quick question.
Mayor Taps will be very quick off the mark, Your Worship. Mayor Denia.
Thank you. I think I was just double checking that I didn't miss anything, but I was just in regards consultations mentioned quite a bit in here, but it appears that that consultation is just within our group, and I just wanted to double check in part of the work streams for the next year if there was any consultation or engagement required with the community. And I may just be missing the great work that I have no doubt already happens with the relationships that are already established. But in particular, I just wanted to acknowledge that within our region, we have a high and even more growing Māori population, and we rely very heavily on our marae in times like the worst days. And so just wanted confirmation that those relationships are still ongoing with them as well, as we have seen in other areas, such as when the Kaikoura earthquakes happened, how heavily Marae were relied on at the time. So just wanted reassurance that there would still be ongoing work. Yeah.
And I'll refer to you, Taya, but perhaps if we can cover off the next year and how we intend to approach the consultation going into what will be 25, 26.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Acknowledging indeed that the consultation is required with our local councils, working on the group annual plan. We're already looking into the next annual plan pretty soon. Also trying to align with the territorial authorities' review of annual plans as well. So there's going to be more consultation coming up pretty soon, already on this side of Christmas, where we're going to be looking at, it sounds a bit of far in the distance, but 25, 26 annual plan. Looking at the feedback from this current annual plan, looking at what we got in our big 5-year operational plan, and getting the consultation with KGLA and KEG, but also with the local emergency management officers to make sure we've got it right there.
Yeah, apologies, probably quite a detailed question, but given the demographic makeup of our region and also who we rely on in these times, there's the discussions that we have with the councils, but I suppose it is also up to us councils to be having those wider discussions with our community. But I do want to acknowledge the work that has been reported on.
I think, if I may, Chair, there's one more piece probably in our consultation that we're going to change next year. So typically we pull this together. Tayo's done a 5-year plan, and again we present it to KGLA, and it works its way up here. But the unease I have with that is there's not a lot of opportunity to influence that before it gets to you. So part of Tayo's consultation this year will be with working groups at the TA and iwi level to let that influence our work program before it's drafted and before it goes into the approval process. So hopefully we're picking up any common themes at the community level and letting that influence the work the group takes.
Thank you for that, Director Crowe. As I look around the room to elected members, for everything that territorial authorities, that all councils actually across the country must and want to consult on, just looking to see how we can streamline that, particularly where the timing can be worked in rather than having parallel separate pieces of work. I think that's what I'm hearing from that. Thank you for that. If there's nothing further, just clarifying the consultation process part that's been referred to in the many tables that are part of this agenda item. If you're happy with that, Metatso, I do have a mover in Nedenia, seconder in Metatso. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. We are moving on to page 120 of our agenda this morning. Agenda item 8.8. Thank you, Tayo. The Bay of Plenty Sedum Group Training KPI measurement. Thank you.
I promise you nearly finished with me for the day. This is my second last one. And I acknowledge Councillor Schuler. Everyone else would have seen this report before, but in a somewhat different format. So I'll just talk briefly to that, and such that I think the report we've had historically is probably hasn't helped in understanding where we are in terms of our training and development performance as a group in terms of our delivery. So we've changed this report to more of a generic format and simplified the reporting somewhat. So you'll see the statistics of the trained INT staff and function pool staff contained towards the back, presented to you as bar graphs. We also have included in here the training delivery over the last to this group, and acknowledge that in the future, in this report going forward, I'm also going to include at the back of this a small snippet of the sort of the financial performance as it pertains to the training, how far we are against budget going forward, so you can see how we're tracking through the year. We'll give you a little bit more background because I think it'll be useful. The other thing we've talked about recently, and I acknowledge Paula in the corner and talking to the other territorial authorities, is how we program our training courses out. And this has been an item of reflection for some time, initiated by Clinton, in fact, that there's something we needed to do was look at our training delivery. So we've had a out-of-the-box solution we've been running for some time, and we just want to test the efficiency and effectiveness of that. That's something we'll undertake in the next term as well, and we'll provide a report back with when we do.
Members. Questions, points of clarification? Lydia.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering about the rationale for the 80% KPI percentile. I didn't quite understand where that was coming from. Perhaps you can explain a little bit more about that.
Certainly. So this stems from the originating source of this document. So as it happened several years ago, and I don't have the date in front of me or front of mind, unfortunately, so I'm a little uninformed that way, my apologies. There was a design put in place for measuring the KPI goals of how your EOCs are staffed in terms of the minimum numbers. And appreciating there was something of a deficit for most people, there was a pathway provided in terms of a timeline to lift up to 100% of capability. So at the moment, we're sitting in the 2024 to 2031 bracket in terms of where we need to be for those statistics. So that's where the 80th percentile comes from. It was measured initially as 60th percent, then we've stepped to 80 in this reporting period, appreciating it's quite a long reporting period, with the intent that when we get to 2031, we'll be at 100% of the numbers presented to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Yeah, Councillor Shaw.
Just quickly, I mean, yeah, obviously great initiative, just looking at that, 8 hours is an annual number, isn't it? For the training and development?
Engagement time, yes.
Engagement. I suppose it's, you have to do what we can do, but 8 hours probably over a year for, potentially training for these significant events. Be wonderful if that could be a bit higher.
It would be. Yeah, and that's the part of the challenge we face, and I think through this year, it's something that was touched on earlier with the really broad span that sits within council in terms of roles and responsibilities. It's finding the time to keep the staff, spending that time for them to stay engaged. More of the statutory roles tend to have it in, for example, your lead roles have a weekly element, which was reflected in the previous documents.
Yeah.
But in terms of your other staff, they don't actually have to attend a lot to achieve that. And one response can cover that quite easily, or even a small exercise or two. So, but we don't necessarily track against that engagement anymore. And the reason, Councillor, is it's actually quite hard to do. So in terms of getting that reporting back of every time that your staff touch into the CDM space.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw, and I read that as a bare minimum from the report. So of course there is both a blessing and a burden if you are fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your lens, deployed across. It's a live training exercise often for many of the staff as well. I'm sure Director Crowe. So bare minimum, and take opportunity for anything eight and up.
8 and up.
Annually. If there's nothing further from committee members, we do have. No, just the one. One recommendation to receive the report Bay of Plenty CDM Group training KPI measurement. Do I have a mover? We have a mover and we have tap sold. We have a seconder. I'm going to do the second. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against. The item is carried. We are on to agenda item 8.9. And we welcome in Mark Iverme. There you go, that's what I was just going to say. We have a presentation for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council Natural Hazards Management. Mark, welcome in. I did see you earlier there.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Mark Iverme. Yeah, thanks for the welcome. I work for the Regional Council as a Natural Hazards Planner. And today I have a short presentation to share. I will focus on an update on the mapping that we've done and also some risk management advances under the direction of the regional policy statement. So just checking you can see my slides.
See it perfectly clear, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. So a snapshot of natural hazard mapping across the region and the progress to date. We have completed the coastal hazard mapping that includes coastal erosion and coastal inundation. That work is currently being adapted into our council processes, and the communication planning is underway. So we're likely to be able to share that information sometime in the next 2 to 4 months. Liquefaction and landslide, 2 of our key geotech hazards, they've both been mapped for the region. This information is now available on our Regional Council website on the Bay Hazards Viewer. Tsunami, there's some update work being undertaken through Emergency Management Bay of Plenty. That's being co-funded by us and the Natural Hazard Commission. And I understand that work is due to be complete later this year. Flooding, it's important to note that there's a joint responsibility under the regional policy statement for flooding. The district councils are responsible for stormwater flooding, and the regional council is responsible for river flooding. There is still a bit of work to do there. The Whakatane River modelling will be finished this year, and Rotorua have a number of catchments and are progressively working through stormwater modelling, and we're following in behind with our river modelling too. There is currently a gap in Kawerau for stormwater modelling, and that does provide a challenge when assessing risk for new developments. Our strategy for active fault mapping is based on providing new information for urban growth structure planning. So, for example, this work's been undertaken for Te Tumu and Tauriko West in Tauranga, Mokoroa, and also Rotorua are updating their active fault maps that are currently displayed in their district plan. We will engage with the TAs on a case-by-case basis if there is further work required, for example, at Hukataya and Upotiki, when further structure planning work gets underway. Volcano is the last cab off the rank, mainly because of the limited land use controls to reduce risk. However, we have undertaken a scoping study which recommends completing a regional ashfall model, which we program in to be done in the next 1 to 2 years. We are also following some GNS research on the offshore islands of Tuhua and Whakaari. There's some work that should land next year outlining the potential risk on land from the general volcanic hazards, but also from potential tsunami. So I'm just going to take 5 minutes to focus in on 2 recent projects to give you a feel for what that looks like. The first one is a regional landslide study. This has been used following the same methodology that Tauranga City Council has used, and we've extended that to the rest of the region. It's also the methodology that Auckland Council and Waikato Regional Council are using, and it stems from Australia Geomechanics Guidelines document. It's important to note that the regional landslide mapping shows susceptibility on the slope, and it will be used for land use planning resource consent officers to require further information at a site level. But there is a gap in terms of the run-out zone, and we are undertaking some stage 2 work with the district councils for high priority areas, for example, Mokoroa and Hukataya, where we will be looking to pilot a study to understand that hazard in more detail. The second mapping project, which has been undertaken over the last 3 to 4 years, is mapping coastal erosion for the entire Bay Plenty shoreline. This map here is of Bowentown, and it shows a pink line with the current hazard zone that can be useful for seeding purposes. And the purple lines there are forecasting out 100 years into the future that we are required to do under national legislation for land use planning. A key change here is that we have recognised the uncertainty of climate change and have 2 future scenarios for that. An upper and lower sea level rise scenario, so that some of that uncertainty can be understood over the long term. The other big change is that not only do we have this mapping for the open coast sites, but we also have it for our harbour sites and cliff sites, and even the gravel beaches on the east coast, places like Torere. This information not only is used for land use planning, but also climate change adaptation planning. I know a number of councils are using this or plan to use this information for their climate change risk assessment work. The Regional Council also supports community-based adaptation planning through a fund. And then an example on the East Coast, there's a project called Te Tirohanga Atoi, where that project led by Taniwara Maxwell is looking at marae preparedness at Torere, Ōpape and Maraenui, and it will be using this information. It's worth noting too at this point that we do have a good relationship with the Natural Hazards Commission, and they have requested the use of our information that's publicly available to pilot and upload onto their national portal. So they have a plan to roll out a national portal for natural hazard mapping, and they'll be using our information as a test run to see how that works. We do have a big program to update our Bay Hazards viewer over the next 6 months to make sure that we have all of our completed natural hazard mapping up there for public viewing. And that includes a lot of the river modelling work that's been undertaken under the River Scheme Sustainability Project over the last 3 to 5 years. So now just moving into the risk management part of the presentation. I just wanted to share this slide, which came from some colleagues in the Waikato, looking at the different tools we have to address natural hazard risk. This is a flooding example. And it's important to note that the Regional Council does a lot of work maintaining stop banks and river maintenance work. We also need to rely on the district councils to put in place controls for subdivision and new development and district plans, and obviously emergency management for evacuation and other community-based approaches. So there is an integrated approach, and at times it is a challenge to make sure that we are looking at this holistically. The regional policy statement provides direction mainly on the planning side of it, and I'll provide some further updates on advances in that space. I think another trend to note is that we also need to consider larger events, like what happened in Hawke's Bay. And that's where district planning and emergency management certainly come to the forefront. One other trend I've also noticed is climate change adaptation. So that's, I guess, another piece of work that's probably on top of all of this as well. So my last slides are just showing some updates on work under the direction of the regional policy statement natural hazard provisions. The first two at the top there, the Awatarariki debris flow and the citywide flooding plan change for Tauranga City, are examples of hazard-specific plan changes with a focus on risk to life, and also considering different types of development like critical facilities that need to respond in an emergency, having tighter controls. That was a key focus for Tauranga in their plan change. The last three there are looking at urban growth areas, so where we would like to grow in our region. These plan changes consider all hazards that are relevant to these sites. The Pukehangi Heights, Omokoroa and Tauriko West and the business estate. There are a number of other smaller examples, but these are the main ones where there's been a significant amount of work from staff at the district council level. And we are making progress too with a catchment-based approach. So for Tauriko West, for example, the stormwater and river modelling was done for both those plan changes to make sure the wider catchment approach was understood and that there would be no risk or no increase in risk downstream from flooding. So last slide here on what's in the pipeline. Kawerau, Rotorua and Western Whakatane, are looking at hazard-specific plan changes to incorporate new information. They are in the scoping stage. The last two there are future growth areas, major ones at Hukatai and Tumu. So the focus of all of this work really is to ensure that new development is low risk and there's no increase in risk downstream or off-site to other properties. So I'd just like to finish by thanking the staff at the regional council, the district council level, who have the responsibility to implement the regional policy statement through their planning controls. It is a significant amount of work. So I'd just like to thank them and their part they're playing to ensure new development is resilient to natural hazards and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mayor Tapsell.
Thank you very much. Mark Tapsell here from Rotorua. I've just got a question regarding the natural hazards mapping. Obviously, ultimately, our goal with this is to protect people and protect property. But I do think that at times councils can be under risk of litigation if there was information known that homes or communities were on areas that may have been at risk. People then buy that property, something happens to the property, it's no longer livable, or is destroyed or damaged. At what stage in this natural hazards mapping does that become officially a risk that may be put on a limb, as an example? I think we've seen examples around the country and other places where people have purchased property and then later it's become quite a difficult discussion on, does public money go into buying out private property? And of course, the worst discussion of things like, managed retreat for some of our communities and our villages. So I just wonder in terms of that's my question, sorry, in terms of natural hazards mapping, at what stage is that officially a risk that would be declared from a council in Lim?
That is a very good question. It is probably a problem that the district council staff grapple with more than ourselves, although I would say that there is a change to the Lagoima legislation, which places more responsibility on the regional council to pass over our information in a timely manner and in a way that is easily understood. So I think that is a good change, and we are working through the implications of that. And perhaps there's some processes that will be developed to answer that question. I would just acknowledge that many of these modelling and mapping projects are multi-year, and they do require robust independent peer review. So yeah, it's a tough one to know when information is draft and then final, and when it's suitable to release. But I think it's kind of work in progress. Sorry to answer that question in a half-baked way.
Let's see, Tavish, please, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And it showcases the importance of collaboration between the staff. It's my experience and understanding is that when a TLA has the mapping, then they need to respond accordingly. So it may be that they consider that in terms of district plan reviews or choose to review their district plan, look at their LIM process. So there'll be a range of responses from TLA in regards to that natural hazards mapping. And it has gone very well across this region in terms of how people are responding. We can provide some follow-up information for you in terms of how that response happens across the region. This is something, it's a very, very good question because this is something that will be a focus for the councillors and mayors and chairs in the future, particularly because the mapping with the climate resilience focus as well means that you may need to make decisions in the future in terms of land use that you didn't see coming 10 years ago and certainly 50 years ago.
Thank you, Medenia, and then Mayor Luca. Medenia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, similar one to Mayor Tapsell and following on, the coastal erosion mapping will be of high interest and will create a lot of anxiety and perhaps even anger in the community. So I'm just wondering how is the comms aspect of that going to be handled? Because if it's just, the maps are just dropped on everyone, that there'll be quite a lot of backlash, I imagine. So how is that to be considered?
Yes, through you, Chair, my understanding, and Mark, if you could take your presentation down, that would be great, is that that's done jointly with the TLA staff, so that information is provided to TLAs, and then there are either joint communications or the TLA leads that communication out. That's what's happened in the past.
Thank you, Mayor Luca.
Yeah, just to point out that, I mean, when it comes to climate change, there is no such thing as certainty. So you can never tell anybody that there's no risk. I'm not sure. I mean, all of these scenarios you see could be turned on their heads quite quickly. Climate change, I mean, the latest data seems to show that things are accelerating. Tipping points are being approached. If we breach some of them, then all bets are off. So I'm not sure how you can ever tell a person you can build X meters above this level and you'll be okay. I'm just not sure how you handle that. There's no such thing as certainty here.
Thank you, Mayor Luca. Very valid question. And if you find some proposed solutions or answers, we would absolutely embrace receiving that suggestion.
Well, one potential avenue is build wherever you like at your own risk. I can't, because who's ever going to, bank on you can do this safely scenarios in a world where there is no certainty anymore.
Possible solution for the legal team across all of our TLAs to explore, Your Worship.
Don't want to be the harbinger of doom, but hard to be optimistic these days.
Thank you. Ben Moore.
Just a question through the chair. Maybe Fiona can help me with this one. Just with LIM reports. Obviously, I do a little bit of work on LIM reports, and I see some. If work is underway, really they should be highlighted on any LIM report. Someone purchasing something, and then to find out this mapping is actually underway, and then after the settled to find these maps. But I'm just wondering what information is shared with insurance companies, because what will force moving away from areas is we're going to find people that have got properties that are uninsurable, and it'll be right across everyone's districts. Won't be just coastal, it'll be by the lakes, it'll be everywhere. I mean, there's places in Tauranga. Yeah, just wondering if it's shared with was there discussions with the insurance company in general?
Yes, through you, Chair, Tauranga City Council do this extremely well. And it may be that they come back and showcase what they're doing in terms of their LIM reports, and particularly in terms of flood management. Again, an excellent question in terms of the insurers. The insurers are particularly interested in this information and particularly interested in flood management. And so we do expect to see change in New Zealand in terms of how they categorise and seek payments. And again, at the regional level, we are involved with the Insurance Council and with insurers in terms of their interest in flood modelling and information.
I'm sure if we're requested, we'd love to contribute and share that with the group.
Councillor Shaw, that's a very warm invitation that I'm sure every member of the committee would warmly embrace and accept. Perhaps we will have some type of coordination, if it's applicable. Open to do that through this, have that invitation either through this committee or through the Mural Forum. Either way, let's not make it difficult. We know what needs to be done and we have the ability to get that done with a warm invitation, which we will take. Thank you, team. If there is nothing further with regards, Mark, thank you for your presentation. I hear that there's lots of work that we can, each of our territorial authorities can come back into the House and just have those direct conversations within House with our staff. And then, of course, we'll enjoy the warm hosting of Tauranga City to share some of how they do some of their processes. Thank you, Tim. We have a recommendation, please, to receive the presentation, Bay Plenty Regional Council Natural Hazards Management. Do we have a mover? We have a mover in Mayor Tapsell. Do I have a seconder? I'm happy to second. I have a seconder in Mayor Moore. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against? The item is carried. We are at agenda item 8.10, which is a verbal update from Director Crow. Director Crow, if there's nothing that we haven't already covered in the 124 pages of our agenda, sir, we're in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll try not to take up too much of the time on that prompt. My first point is a thank you to yourself, Mayor Moore and Mayor Luca, for your attendance at a NZVSAP, so the Science Advisory Panel recently, as technology allowed for you to attend. Acknowledge that. We facilitated bringing together GNS, NEMA, thank you Lily for your attendance, and the mayors I previously mentioned, to help inform some of the science behind the work and the risk presented by Whakaari. So it was a very informative session. We had some really good people in the room, particularly in acknowledging Nico Fournier for his input, and we'll continue to stay engaged with those people and come back to you in due course if they have anything further for us.
There was a question of sharing the recording, maybe those that weren't able to be there. I don't know. Did we ever? I think we decided that it could be.
I believe it was. Yeah. So that should have been shared. If you haven't been able to access it, please let me know and we'll recirculate it. Thank you. The second one is I'd like to acknowledge four staff placements within NBOP in the recent term. So acknowledging Chris, who's filling in the manager planning space. Thank you. Stacey Tahiri, we talked to earlier. We have Sammy Moore, who isn't with us here today. She's an advisor in the communications and engagement team, working alongside Lisa, and Shell over here in the back row. We'll be seeing more of Shell as some of her engagement is with the Whakaari Coronial Inquiry. So we'll see a little bit of Shell on that space. So welcome to you all and thank you for joining the team. Another point of interest for this forum is we'll have a ministerial visit on the 9th of October. We are awaiting the run sheet on that day and we'll inform you as to the engagement or exactly what that looks like, but I can't tell you much more at the moment. But Minister Mitchell will be joining us in Tauranga on that day. And another piece I'll talk to, but I won't steal your thunder, Lily, I promise, is around the catastrophic planning. So the group office will lead a catastrophic planning piece of work through Chris's team. Catastrophic plan and handbook that's currently being circulated by NEMA, and how that impacts Probably most likely our response models and how we respond in those much larger events. So that'll become a really key piece of work over not this next year, probably longer than that. It'll become a recurring work item as we work through our hazardscape in that space. Well, there, unless there's any questions for me.
Any questions from committee members? Catastrophic, here we go, Meluka.
You used the word catastrophic, so I jumped in. You don't have a run sheet for Minister Mitchell, but have you got any idea what the general themes that he intends to cover are, or no idea at all?
Not at this stage. I sense it's a meet and greet, unless you have more, Lily, do you? Sorry,
My
through the
pleasure.
chair.
Thank you to the chair. I understand the minister. I'll start by saying that the minister is really keen on this portfolio. He's really engaged in the EM sector. I understand that he's using this as an opportunity for this region to ask questions, meet and greets, things like that. He's open to, if you have things that you want to speak about, that would be useful to know, and we could try organize that. Yeah, that's it.
Just recheck, that was the 9th of October.
Correct.
That's a Wednesday, team, hump day, right in the middle of the working week. About 2 odd weeks away. Thank you. Thank you. If there's nothing further, please, a recommendation to receive the verbal update from the director, Crow, September 2024. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Meluka. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, the item is carried. We're on to page 125 of our agenda. Agenda item 8.11. National Emergency Management Agency, for those who are more familiar, NEMA, update for Bay of Plenty CEDAM Joint Committee for the 27th of September. We're joined by Advisor Lily Foltz. Lily, we're in your hands. Thank you.
Kia ora anō. If you don't know me, for the benefit of new members, here tēnei no nu atuhoi, nara rei mihi atu kia tātou katoa. I am your Regional Emergency Management Advisor. I support the Bay of Plenty Group. Another part of my role is we are deployable for response. So often, if you're a part of declaring a state of emergency or your region or area is activated, you often see a REMA is what often reported. NEMA has provided a written report to the agenda. I won't go through it, but I will pick up highlights. You'll see the first piece is about space weather. I won't go into too much detail about that, but what I will say is that space weather has been around for generations longer than any of us. So it's not a novel event or hazard, but our understanding about the space is novel. So Minister Mark Mitchell has assigned NEMA as the lead agency to support planning in that space. What I will say for members is the key is to focus on impacts and how we can support managing those. So what happens if we have loss of power and things like that. We will see a plan that will become available in November. So we'll have more information about that then. Glad Mark's gave an update about catastrophic planning. In terms of review of reviews, I will say that the report has become available online today. I encourage members to go through and read that as it's now publicly available. The review of reviews is different to the government inquiry, to the government's response to the government's inquiry into the North Island severe weather events, the event that happened last year. I understand a cabinet paper was sent to committee yesterday, I think. So it's on track to be made public in October. More information will be happening there. The CEDAM Resilience Fund, every year NEMA provides a portion of funding that anyone can apply for if it's relevant to emergency management. Te Arawa Lakes Trust made an application and their application was successful, so that information is included in the report. And lastly, I will say that Shakeout is an annual event focused on earthquake and tsunami preparedness. Use this opportunity to encourage your communities to participate in that, and that is on the 24th of October. That's it from me. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Advisor Lily. I thought you'd say that would be on the 9th of October, but no, that's not when it is. Perhaps that's when things will be released. Any questions points of clarification from committee members? If there are none, I'm happy to move receipt of the report. NEMA update Bay of Plenty Joint Committee today, the 27th of September 2024. Second one year capsule. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against the item, there are none. The item is carried. We are on page 127 of our agenda. We do item 8.12. We have a presentation from Paula Milday. Please, if you would come join us, Paula. The Emergency Management Tauranga City Council Joint Committee report. Paula, we're in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning to everybody. As this is just a simple update from Tauranga City Council. About a year back, group decided that they would be reporting on group matters and that councils were encouraged to report on their own matters. So this is a report to that effect. So I'll take the report as read at this point. I suppose for us, in terms of highlights that's sitting on here, our biggest challenge continues to be the evacuation of Papamoa. So we currently have WSP doing a significant piece of work for us there. As Mark alluded to, GNS Science is busy with regional modelling for us. But in the interim, we're having a look at, are there any interim things that we might be doing in terms of enhancing the evacuation of that area? So that is our gift that keeps on giving. It's a challenge and it's probably our biggest worry. And probably the only other piece of work which we're really putting a lot of work into is our iwi marae relationships. So we have 5 marae that stood up for us during the weather events last year, and we have supported financially in terms of doing some updates, whether it's sealing of car parking areas, whether it's pumps for pumping out water, etc., just to make them more accessible. We also help them with accessibility audits for those that wish our support in that area as well. So yeah, unless there's any other questions.
Questions from committee members? If there are none.
You talk about the evacuation of Papamoa, and yet it seems to just keep getting bigger and bigger. Is there an idea of, are there any limits, or will...
Mayor, the biggest challenge is that we don't have tsunami recognised in the building act as a risk. So we are working internally in terms of what other levers might we pull for that, and looking perhaps at green space, and can we enforce developers to look at green space that remains, that will have to remain, and having that situated strategically to allow for evacuations that it can't be built over. So it is a hot topic internally, and as I was saying to Councillor Schuler coming down here, the emergency management space is really, it's super frustrating because the emergency management team can only work with the environment they've been given. We don't build roads, we don't build infrastructure, assets, etc. And we'd really like to get ahead of the game and have those conversations with our peers that do, to consider the EM element and the climate stuff, as Mark alluded to. That when we're building bridges or sound barriers along our safe location, which is the TL, which you can't access because of the sound barriers, that some thought is given to that proactively, that we don't sit reactively trying to fix things, which typically is difficult, and if we can, it's really costly. So would love this committee's support in terms of that, but I think, Ben, you are leading a piece of work which came out of the KEG in terms of looking at that planning space. I think CE Bewley, David Bewley was initially going to do that for us, but you have put your hand up to take the lead. So the councils, there are council reps working with Ben in terms of what that might look like.
Tsunamis aside, storm surges, unprecedented ones. I'm not sure what the height above sea level is for most of Papamoa. It must be pretty close to a couple of meters, is it? Or?
I don't know the number offhand, but it's enough to concern us.
And yet we keep building. Talking about managed retreats. But anyway.
Yeah, so that might be above my pay grade at this point. If it was up to me, I certainly would make those changes, because it's a significant worry for anybody that works in that space.
This committee, being a political entity, could perhaps do some advocacy.
Exactly.
Thank you. We'll go councillor Campbell.
Gee, we've been banging on about the inundation line way back. And I know Mayor Ristra had concerns even of her town, remember? And they didn't even have an inundation line for Potiki, which was pretty slack really, considering that Potiki, Whakatane, Tauranga and Western Bays is all our coastline in the Bay of Plenty region. Have we got that yet? Or, we're going back 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, still haven't got an inundation line. In fact, I think they did it for a 1.5 metre wave. And I think I asked for, well, what about a Fukushima wave? And they said, oh, it won't happen here. Well, Jesus, that's great. So I think Mayor Luke is right. We need to put some clout behind this, because if somebody sees that they are in an vulnerable position, and Mayor Tapsell even mentioned this, and we are either not aware of it or we are aware of it, not allowing the public to know. It's all about let the buyer beware, for goodness sake. But we keep kicking the can down the road, and we may pay dearly for it if we keep doing it.
Thank you, councillor Campbell, with 21 years experience as someone who's been sitting at this committee table. Completely agree. I would just question, is this the right setting? In fact, we have an opportunity as committee members to return to the house of the TLA where these conversations are held, to be able to actually have that very honest discussion. That would be my suggestion, actually. So not dismissing the role of this committee, but it's very clear we started at the front end of specific roles and responsibilities under the legislation, which is one part. I think the conversation we are now having is in terms of our local community planning. Will we build or rebuild? Should we or should we not be? Particularly where there have been some historic events that perhaps didn't happen for 4 or 5 decades that we now have in our history books in our communities.
So, Chair, I think it's important that if Minister Mitchell's coming here again to talk, let's cut out the photographs and talk actions here, because he's the guy that can actually put some pressure on his cohorts in Wellington to say, hey, listen, don't come down and tell cities where they should be building, or just build for the sake of building. Build sensibly, I don't know, but it's just a discussion we should be having with them. That's all.
Two-pronged approach committee. Let's make sure we're having our local conversations locally to be reinforced, so we're not having some conflicting information from some of our team, our wider government team, that are forcing pressure to be able to achieve some other, dare I say, political drivers.
And just to put in a plug for the old-fashioned way of doing business, I thought you could just push a button and the inundation line would come up on this, but as I say, I've been waiting 4 years for it. It hasn't come yet. So.
The waiting's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, I know. Everything's coming.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Rangihika.
Just mine isn't a question, it's really an acknowledgement as to the report and the relationship between the iwi and Māori and marae. If we all sit back and take heed and look at it, there's a lot of benefits that come from using localism within these areas and within these things that we try to grow. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there's some really good opportunity out there, and it's nice to see the report. Thank you.
With your indulgence, can I comment something on the limbs?
By all means.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just for the committee's information, there was a webinar on consultation proposal for regulations for natural hazard information on limbs just this last Wednesday, which our TCC team did attend. MB has the consultation document out at the moment. No, not MB, DRA, sorry. And are looking for submissions, and end date for submissions is 30th of October. So if your respective spaces may want to contribute, they may already be aware of it, but that is on the table at the moment.
Members, we have a couple of action points that have come out of that conversation in terms of the preparation.
If I may, just a small inject is we can assist with some of that mapping in the inundation lines. But it's we'll come back at a later forum and maybe go through a quick workshop on how to access those data sets, because they are available, which is probably an education piece on where to locate them and how to use them.
Thank you, Director Crowe, both for committee members and for communities who rely on this information as well to be informed. So we have some local conversations, we have some preparation for 2 weeks' time on the 9th of October, and we also have revisiting how to make it so much simpler to find this information in terms of the maps that are available. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I have a move to receive the report. So moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Schuller. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, the item is carried. We've come to the public excluded part of our meeting. Commissioner.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Forgive us, and we're just waiting for our koro to return to our voting.
Dozed off.
At 12:47 PM, we have the readmission of the public. So moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Schuller. All those in favour, please signal aye. Aye. Those against, there are none. The item is carried. And just reiterating that the purpose of the public excluded portion of our agenda was with regards to withholding the information was necessary to maintain legal professional privilege. As we've returned back into the public readmission section of our meeting, we are at agenda item 12, which is the consideration of items not on the agenda, and there are none advised, and we have come to the conclusion of our meeting. Just 2 acknowledgements, and I see he's not returned. We were joined earlier by the former director of our Emergency Management Bay of Plenty group, by Clinton Norday. Unfortunately, there was a reschedule of a farewell due to COVID, and then a number of committee members were not available, and we thank Councillor Campbell for representing the entire committee on our behalf with that farewell. And Councillor Crosby. And Councillor Crosby. And Councillor Scott. There were a number there, thank you. We're also here at the end of our meeting to pay an acknowledgement of Cara Gordon, our Principal Advisor of Emergency Management Bay of Plenty. Hey there, Cara. There's our Cara. Cara has resigned from Emergency Bay of Plenty and will be finishing up at the end of next month of October. Moving to Melbourne, a new position and role at the Victoria Department of Health as Manager of Emergency Management, Sector Planning and Consequence Management. First time I've heard of that, consequence management. Cara, we thank you warmly for your 4 years of service to the Bay of Plenty community and invite you for any words all the way from Australia.
Well, thank you. I wasn't expecting that. I guess I wanted to take the opportunity then to thank you all for your engagement with me over this 4 years. I've really enjoyed working with you as a forum. You've been really engaged and you've certainly made me think a lot, which has been wonderful, and I really appreciate that. It's fair to say the decision to leave wasn't an easy one. There's an exceptional team at MBOT and you've got they've got an exciting period ahead of them under Mark's leadership. So I'm really disappointed to not be a part of that, but made the call earlier this year that it was time for me to find my next adventure, and Melbourne calls. So I'm very excited about that next opportunity for me. So thank you again for your acknowledgement. I really appreciate it.
Under the sweet Sorrento moon, I believe, over in Melbourne, we wish you and your family all the very best. And when your magical time may come in the future to return home to Aotearoa, we will be here waiting for you and your family. Pui anō, we've come to the conclusion of our meeting at 12:51 p.m. and we will invite again our kaumātua of Ngāti Tūwhare ki Kowiro, Te Haukakawa Te Rere, to kia whakakapita tātou hui to close our hui in closing prayer. Let us all be upstanding.
Now our meeting is finished. Now a lot of think between us and others. What's the next step? But now mind forget about that. I want to close our meeting in a good way, in a happy way. Go home happy. Go home to the family waiting for you. Kenui tata. E tō mātou matutarang, ka taputo ingo, ka tāmau tōranga tiratanga. Ke mite tāo ke paikiri te whenua, ke rite anu ke tō te rangi. Humai kia mātou ai nei he tau, o mātou mo tēnei rao. Kore o mātou hara, me mātou ki muri nei o te hunga hara nei kia mātou. Au o ki mātou e kaua kia whakawaia, engari pakore au mātou te kinu. Yo ki te rangatirata te kāmai te kloria. E tō mātou matutaranga nere ka hoki hoki te rā tō rātou kāinga. Humai te huarahi, ta ātā hua, te mana ki a rātou, e tatara mea roa rātou whānau ki a rātou. No reira, may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us forevermore. Amen. Amen. Kia ora. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh, maybe that's all.
Still one more thing, but